I'm Lisa Senecal.
I'm Maya May.
And tonight we're speaking with award-winning writer and speaker Jamie Brizahoff about how to come off the sidelines without losing your mind.
Hey, they are making us feel like we're losing our minds. It's part of their game plan. So today we are celebrating life, love, we're celebrating pride, and we're doing it with one of my very, 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 very favorite people on the planet. She's a mom. She's openly queer, mom to three, not just one, three, which I don't know how anybody does that. Married to a Lutheran pastor. Jamie Brizahoff. I want to bring her out now because let's get this started. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
Hi, Jamie. It's so great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Happy Pride.
Yes, happy Pride.
So when Maya told me that we were having a pastor's wife, my first thought is footloose and okay, so no swearing, no talking about sex, and definitely no dancing. Is there anything else I need to know for our conversation?
Which is funny to me because, Jamie, we talked about this briefly before the show, too.
Yep. So I sent Maya a text earlier and was like, so what's the ground rules? What are the language here? Is an appropriate, well-positioned F-bomb okay? What's the situation? Because I perhaps am not what you expect out of a pastor's wife, though I have to say most pastors' spouses that I know are not.
This is good to know. See, misconceptions. This is what we're all about, is trying to dispel these misconceptions because that's how we bring America together. I'm an optimist about that.
Yeah, it is important. All right. And you two, obviously, the two of you were friends. You've known each other for a long time. Yeah. Tell me the origin story here. How did you guys meet?
I'll let you take that, Jamie.
Yes. All right. It's all you, Maya.
So Jamie and I are both the genderqueer parents. We have genderqueer champion daughters. And genderqueer is a national storytelling campaign for trans youth that helps replace these opinions with actual experiences. And so our daughters are good friends. And we were talking about just kind of all the things that are going on in the world. And it just happened to be Pride Month. So we're like, hey, let's talk about some of what it means to be an ally, to be an advocate, to come off the sidelines, because so many people right now are asking, how do we do something? How do we get involved? And so that's kind of how this came about. And I'm so excited. I'm excited for today's show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we should, because we kind of jumped in. I want to take a step back and let everybody know a little bit more about you and dive into our conversation. So for everybody who did just join us, our guest tonight is an award-winning writer, speaker, mom to three, an advocate for LGBTQ youth and adults. She's married to a Lutheran. I don't know what that is. A Lutheran.
The two Lutherans. The two youths.
More than anything, she's a connector and a storyteller. So once again, welcome, Jamie Brizahoff.
Yay!
Yay!
We're absolutely so glad to get to connect with my friend Maya and meet you. I'm a big fan of y'all's work, and these conversations need to be had.
They absolutely do. And even though we're friends, I'm also a super fan. And what's always fascinated me is you grew up with religion, with faith. You have advanced degrees in religion, not a theologian per se. I know she can quote Bible verses, but can you talk to us a little bit about how you ended up actually getting into advocacy work in the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised Lutheran. I was not a super I was like a typical Lutheran. I don't know. Our family was not in church every Sunday, but I went to Sunday school. When I hit high school, I got more involved in youth group and involvement there. Now I'm part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which is the ELCA. It's the more progressive brand of Lutherans, or flavor of Lutherans, if you will. And so we've always in our church had conversations around social justice and inclusion, and that has evolved over time, and we still have a lot of work to do, but this wasn't foreign to me. that being said, when my daughter came out as transgender at 8 years old, that kind of changed everything. And so that was where I was navigating as a pastor's spouse, raising my kids up in the church in a small rural community in a conservative area of New Jersey. And so we kind of began teaching the people around us what it meant for our daughter to be who she is. And as we shared her story and helped them understand that this is who God made her to be, we realized that those circles of advocacy just got bigger and bigger, and we realized the need to do this work in the world. And so I kind of stepped into it as not only, you know, as a mom, but also as someone who does this full time. It's what I do.
The flip side of advocacy that I know a lot of people worry about, and you've certainly encountered, is that if you are going to be out there and public and speaking on behalf of marginalized groups, you're going to get attacked. They're going to be the trolls. Do you have advice that you can give to me and Maya and also everybody watching about how to
We're all dealing with trolls.
Yeah. We are all dealing with it. I think my daughter is absurdly good at this. She's 15 at this point, and she is able to focus on the positive in a way that I truly don't understand. And so she's my role model, I think, in this. And part of what I've learned is that because she was so protected and affirmed and celebrated in being who she was from a very young age, and we were able to put this protective bubble around her, she is so secure in being who she is that it really doesn't get to her. And so that's like the lead that I follow, to say, I am so secure in what I know to be true, in what we are fighting for, in what we hope for in the world, and of the work we're doing, that the rest, you know, isn't going to push me off this path. That being said, I highly recommend putting some boundaries in place, turning off the devices at times, putting away the Twitter feed, spending time outside, connecting with people who fill you up. I mean, that's so important in order to be able to re-engage in a way that is rooted in truth and in joy and in resilience, opposed to that kind of anger, defensive place that just drains your energy so quickly, as well as not being as effective.
Speaking of draining energy, because I know a lot of us are incredibly exhausted, do you have any like tips or things that you like to do to get your energy back and to preserve your energy?
That's a good question. I mean, I probably could use some better practices around this. For me, some of it's just going outside. Like I just yesterday, I was like, I'm done. This is all too much. I stepped outside and was like, I'm going to lay in the grass in my very boring suburban yard and stare up at the blue sky, because this grounds me in what's real and what's true. Because so often we can get wrapped up in what's not. And so to step away and just be present with what is real and true, whether that's your family, whether that's your loved ones, whether that's your pets or out in nature, I think that's so helpful.
We're in a time when that feedback that we get from social media is such a huge influence in all of our lives, but even more so in the lives of people your daughter's ages. How do you keep reinforcing for them that there is a difference between being liked and likes and the ones that matter, you know, that cocoon that you have, and your internal ability to stay true to yourself? How do you keep reinforcing that and making sure that you know, the bastards don't win?
Yeah. I mean, I think that kids, this generation, and maybe it's true for everyone, but I've seen that they are actually more connected and less able to get swept up in it all than perhaps, you know, a generation older than them, and certainly us on some level. As much as they are so young and so susceptible, like they get the bigger picture and they're not afraid. I think it's easy for adults to spiral with everything going on in the world, and they're just like, nope, we're going to fix it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get the work done, and then we're going to go have fun. And like, I think that's the model we need to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about Gen Z, it's like they are able to fight the fight and for some reason stay joyful while doing it. And so it is in a way like, yes, we do need to follow their lead. And especially right now, and with you being a part of a faith community, to me, do you get aggravated? Like, how do you feel when you see people twisting the faith to use it to almost to weaponize it against our children? Like, how do you reconcile that? How do you work through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. It is a lot of words beyond frustrating. I think people of faith, specifically Christian people of faith, are doing the loudest and most significant harm to the LGBTQ plus community, certainly personally and politically. And they're doing it with immense power and a whole lot of money and funds behind them. And so that is devastating and really upsetting, because that's not what our faith says. That's not what's in the Bible. That's not actually their view of the world and of God is so much smaller than what's true and what's possible. At the same time, I find a lot of hope in the fact that there are more people of faith that support us than not. We've seen variations of that statistic over and over again, and I don't know the latest, but overwhelmingly it's because they're so quiet that we don't know it. And so I am continually advocating for people of faith and communities of faith to be loudly, boldly, and joyfully celebratory of LGBTQ plus identities. It's not enough to just not be those people. We have to do the opposite. We have to be just as loud in defiance with joy and celebration.
Absolutely.
It's always so much easier to get people to come out in opposition to something. That's why like you go on review sites and the negative reviews are huge, because those are the people who are motivated to say something. You've dealt with that backlash when you've spoken at schools, and I assume businesses as well, places that are trying to do the right thing, and then that flood comes in. How do we get those silent allies off the sidelines and into the game, helping us, reach the place that we all collect the
win? I'm just going to say it. Win. Help us win.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first part is to understand that silent and ally can't go together. That's not a thing. You can't be an ally and be silent. I think people get really caught up in like, oh, well, I'm a good person. I'm not the person out there saying these horrible things or doing those horrible things. But if you want to call yourself an ally, if you truly believe you support the queer community, if you support transgender and non-binary kids like mine, it means that you have to speak up. And so I think some of that is the education. It's continually to lift up stories, understand that there's people, like human beings behind these issues. It's not just tweets, and it's not just, whatever news headlines you're looking at. They're real human beings. And so humanizing that, I think, helps people understand that being quiet now is no longer a choice.
I'm so very glad that you said that, because it is the speaking up and the being loud. And what I love about the way you do it is that it's so incredibly kind and inviting, and yet fiery at the same time. And Mallory McMorrow, who we recently had on the show, she also models that. And I love it because it really resonated with people. And she specifically mentions as a straight white Christian married suburban mom. And so do you think as your identity as being, openly queer, mom of 3, suburban, married to a pastor's wife, is that part of the reason why it's so important for you to speak up, like using your platform?
Yeah, no. And I think that, that people listen to people like them, for better or worse. Like, it's just kind of human nature. And so that's why her speech made such a difference in the way she speaks, because people see someone that shares identities with them and inhabits a similar space in the world and goes, oh, yeah, no, this is what I can do with that privilege. So yeah, it's using your privilege, but it's also connecting with people over common identities. And to say that, like, people will listen to me that might not listen to someone else, who may not, my white picket fences of privilege protect me from a lot, but they also give me access to people that otherwise I wouldn't have. And so using those relationships and helping people understand that this is a place to use our privilege and power and to speak up, and that it doesn't have to be so loud and scary. Like, it's real, honest conversations, humanizing. It's talking about our kids, about our hopes for the world, for their future. These are conversations we all have.
Mm-hmm. And it's something we've already shown that we can do. Moving those white suburban moms can be mobilized. We just did it a couple of years ago. Do you feel as though people still remember that when you're talking to them? It was a massive shift in white suburban women who helped in the 2020 election. And we can certainly do it again in this upcoming one. How do you remind people of the power that they have?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've seen the difference. I see it even on like a local school board level. The people that are speaking out and showing up and engaging in policy from a local, state, and federal level are different than they were before. And that's really wonderful and powerful. And so it's to keep turning that lens back to say, this is what we've done. And there's so much other work to do, but you're not doing it alone. Look at all of us doing it here together.
Absolutely. And at the same time, I also think about the fact that moms are exhausted. We're still coming out of a pandemic where we've had to handle schooling at home. So not homeschooling, but schooling at home, our work and balancing all of that. And also we're in a way counselors, because we're when kids are bullied, we're the ones who are doing that as well. What advice do you have for moms for having to talk to teachers, administrators, and dads too? Because I want the dads to get involved. Sorry, I didn't mean to exclude the dads here. I'm also calling on you as allies to be involved.
I think don't be afraid to speak up, and you don't have to go out on attack. I think so often we think of fighting for equality or for progress as a fight. And when we go into those conversations initially as a fight, it doesn't do us a lot of good. So showing up to have real conversations, to share our concerns, to find out what's going on the other side, so that we can say, how do we get from where we are to where we need to be in a way that helps us all, but most importantly, protects the most vulnerable. I'm not talking about, just compromise, make everyone happy, but we still need to hear where everyone is at in order to help us move together.
I love it. I'm hearing a lot of listening and empathy, which is something that we have fallen short of as a society as of late. But I love hearing it, and it resonates with me. So hopefully it's resonating with everybody at home too.
Yeah, we need to get back to it and get better than we ever were at it if we're going to move things forward again. I have two white cisgender sons, and so I'm really curious, when you're in schools, I have a lot of conversations with them and I know where they're at. Are you seeing the pressure to conform into, the heteronormative, all the awful stuff that boys are supposed to conform to fit into that nasty little box? Are you seeing them push back on that more? Is it because they need to be, it's not just the dads, they need to be allies, huge allies too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very different than like when I was a kid, certainly. I mean, and that's like a long stretch. I think we're still at a point where you've got pockets of young people who understand, who have been raised in a way to know who they are and know what it means to be in community and to care for one another, and that are showing up in that way. And I think that makes a difference, because that's the role modeling that helps others in the community understand that it's okay, that it's safe, that it's the right thing to do, and they're not going to be alone in doing it. Like, that fear is real. And so we need to create support and communities that help people be the people they're called to be.
Absolutely. And I love that you say called to be, right? Because this idea that we are actually called to be our authentic selves. And if we're able to express it, if we're able to be ourselves, there's far less stress in the world. And I think that's for everybody, not just the LGBTQ community. I think a lot of what's going on right now is that people feel this repression when they want to just be themselves and be accepted. And so this advocacy work is so incredibly important, but it is work. And I'm curious about your thoughts because, both of our daughters are very involved. How do you feel about when we have a child who is doing the work, when we're talking to adults who might be a little bit apathetic and don't want to do the work, and yet our kids are doing the work? How do you work through that?
Yeah, I mean, I am beyond proud of my kid for being willing to do what too many adults are not willing to do. And also that's kind of devastating to be aware of. We were at some schools last week, and one of the questions we got from an adult in the room was to ask my daughter, like, you didn't choose this. How does it feel to have to spend all this time advocating for this? Like, this isn't your hobby. You're doing this because of who you are. And I don't remember what she said, but I remember what I said pretty clearly. And it was like, if you're worried that she has to spend all her time doing this, which she shouldn't have to, then I need you to stand up and speak up as loudly as she is. Actually, I need you to do it louder so that the 15-year-olds of the world, I mean, she started publicly advocating when she was 11 or 10, so that the 10-year-olds of the world don't need to be doing this. It's up to us grown-ups to get our shit together and do what we need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's true in so many, we have left our next generation with such a load on their backs in so many different ways.
We're like, Gen Z will fix it. Like, that's her. Gen Z get it.
That is one of the places that I go back to all the time when things start feeling like, oh my God, my generation. And but the kids, they're different. And I think certainly in pockets that there are people who are coming along more slowly. But overall, I do think that this next generation is different. When you're in schools, do you see a stark difference between being in a community with a bunch of adults and being in a school?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, adults are so constantly worried, but what about the kids? How will they understand this? How will they wrap their brains around this? Why are they going to be exposed to this? The kids get it. I mean, I know this from even when my daughter transitioned when she was 8 years old. This was about who she was. All the adults were like, what does she know about sexuality? Well, it's about who she is. It has nothing to do with her sexuality, but the kids in our lives got it. They were like, oh, okay. So you want me to call you Rebecca now? Awesome. I'll do that. It was so simple. It was, they hear, this is who I am. This is how I want you to refer to me. Now let's go play. And that's at an 8-year-old, and it goes up as teenagers too. They get it unless they are deeply immersed in being taught otherwise. It's not a problem. If there's a problem, it's because we've made one.
Is exactly it's so nice to hear this, and it's so refreshing. And I hope everybody at home is really taking that in, because that's why the bill, the Don't Say Gay bills, that's why they're so dangerous, because they're trying to basically take kindness out of children when that kindness is already embedded in us. And so for me, it does get very frustrating as an adult, because I'm like, why are we trying to go backwards? We are doing a great job moving forward. And it just seems to me, it's why do we have to make it so darn difficult? It's frustrating. So we've talked about the challenges, but there are joys. There are joys to doing this work. And so what are some of the highlights that you could talk about when you're doing the work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the conversations we get to have, the young people that reach out to Rebecca or come up to me at events and say, we saw your story and it helped me talk to my mom and it helped my mom understand. And then we went to my family and we used, this video as a tool, and now people understand. And now the ripples outward to see how young people are creating space where adults feel brave enough to be themselves is so incredible. at one point, Rebecca spoke at our denominations, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America's Lutheran Youth Gathering, with 31,000 high school kids. Wow. And after that, we heard the most incredible stories from young people. Yeah, but I also heard from pastors who came out to their youth groups because they realized that they were safe enough to do so and that their kids understood and celebrated their community. And like, to understand the space that we're making for people of all generations to just more fully be themselves. That's like, what else could we hope for?
Yeah. Oh, what a beautiful place to stop. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. I hope people are really listening and taking this in, because what you're saying is so incredibly important.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is incredible. And like, I would love to, I'd love to have you back sometime. I know you're super busy because they have made this work for us all now. And so, but definitely would love to have you back, because it is so important for people to see like what it looks like to be a supportive and inclusive person of faith. And I think with more that we can model that, the more that people can see that, they can understand like, we're just families wanting to thrive, trying to thrive in an environment that might not be as healthy as it could be for everybody. So thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you back.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Oh, like, it's possible. Yeah. This idea that we can't reconcile who we're meant to be with faith, to me, is like, it's so crazy, because in my experience, and in my experience with my daughter, it's the same. It's easier for her to be who she is than to pretend she's someone she's not. And this idea that letting kids know about LGBTQ families is somehow going to convert them, like, and it's going to change them. No, what it's going to do is help people see themselves perhaps and go, oh, that resonates with me. And so that part of them that they've repressed perhaps is able to lead to a part that can like open up and be happy. And that's what we need to celebrate, is the ability to just be happy with oneself, to be happy being.
Yeah. And, the Don't Say Gay bills and the rest of the anti-LGBTQ legislation that so many states are trying to pass, you can't legislate out of reality. Like, right. It's not at these, third, fourth, fifth grade levels that they seem to be so concerned about, that, that's when kids are going to find out that they're LGBTQ folks. Like, no, they already know. They know their friend has two moms or two dads, or that somebody is transgender that they love. And all you're convincing the kids of is that the adults are still complete freaks and can't just be like normal people and accept that people are people, and we don't have to try to hide some people away or force them to pretend they're somebody that they're not.
Yeah, it hasn't worked in the past, and it's certainly not going to work now. Like, inclusivity is like the present and the future, whether or not people want to accept it. And I think it's pretty clear when you have companies like Disney speaking up on behalf of LGBTQ people, that we know that that's where we're going. And to me, it's a happy future. So yeah. I want to celebrate it, because I celebrate what's good, and that's good. So
yeah, we all have to keep celebrating what's good. We all have to keep doing everything we can to be allies and advocates. There is so much at stake, and all of us at the Lincoln Project are working hard with you, and we can't do the show or anything else that the organization does without you. In fact, the small donations from our supporters mean that we're not beholden to corporations. We don't have to worry about answering to them. We don't sell ads. We don't answer to anyone but you. So with your help, we call out those in power, we punch up, and we're fearless. And if you haven't already, consider giving a donation of any size. It all adds up. It really matters. And it helps us all continue to do this work together to save our democracy.
Yeah, together. That's how we're going to do it. So please donate. And also check out The Breakdown with Tara Setmayer, returning tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. They will be joined by Randy Rainbow. It's super exciting. Before we go, after a show full of hope and action, it is important that we remind you what we're fighting against, because in order to have this inclusive future, we need to kind of get rid of this idea of this autocratic, dystopian future that they're trying to create. So this ad is from last year, but it sets the stakes, and sadly, it's more relevant than ever. So have a look, and if you like it, share it, and we'll see you next time. Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
I want to know why what happened in Myanmar can't happen here.
No reason. I mean, it should happen here. No reason. Right? That's right.
America has crossed a line. The Republican Party believes in ending the American experiment, led by a man obsessed with power and money, who will say and do anything to seize control again.
This election was rigged.
To punish those who oppose him. His followers don't just disagree with us. They've got something worse in mind. We know what national populism and authoritarianism lead to. Every time.
That's what this is all about.
That's why we will never compromise with this evil. We will never step back from the line, because we believe in America. Are you in this fight? Or have they already won?